the word father falls on ears a lot differently depending on where you're sitting. But I want to say happy Father's Day to all the dads that are in the room. For all those that this day brings real warm thoughts and feelings and memories, I'm so grateful for that. For those of this day, maybe it's a little more challenging because of experiences that you've had. Man, my heart goes out to you for that. Also for dads that are here that go, some of my hardest parts about Father's Day are just, they're me, and it's inside. My heart goes out to you today too. And I want you to know that we're going to be really talking about a lot of things today, but at the heart of it is a Father who loves us so much that no matter what our earthly experiences with Dad have been, He's come to perfect us in some really incredible ways. We'll get there. Let me start instead first with a story from my childhood with my dad. There was one constant at our house, no matter where we lived. There was always a workshop where Dad was doing woodworking. There was his passion, his hobby, something he was always spending time on. Usually you just had to tune your ear. You could hear where he was because there was work going on there. If you didn't see him in the house proper, go look in the shop. That's probably where he's at. Wherever we moved to, that was one of the first things that had to get constructed was Dad had to have his shop. And so I spent a lot of time in that shop, was around him a lot. It was always loud and dusty, and sometimes it really didn't pertain to me or interest me a lot. That's where Dad was, so that's where I would go if I wanted to connect with Dad. And he was always making stuff, usually dressers and tables and cabinets and things like that. But one time I remember as a kid, he was making something, and I was watching him make it over a period of days, and I could not figure out what he was building. Not that I really cared or needed to know each time he was building something what it was for. This was just something that I didn't quite have a filter for it. I've never seen him build something like this. And so I didn't know what it was. I remember asking him about it. He gave me some answers, and they weren't really satisfactory, but I just kind of was like, oh, okay, and moved on. Well, fast forward several weeks, and on Christmas morning, my brother and I come down the stairs, and there are 2 wooden sleds that Dad has made. And they are the very thing that I saw him building in the shop. I was looking right at them, but I didn't know what they were. I was seeing them all taken apart in just some pieces. I saw a side profile of this. Think of kind of like an old school runner sled type thing. And I couldn't see it. And in a moment, it all became clear. And I looked at him and I said, I saw you make this. I was watching you. You made it right in front of me. And I didn't even realize what you were doing. Well, Dad is still making great stuff. And he's still making things that sometimes when I see them, I don't really know exactly what they are. Just a couple weeks ago, he came for a visit, and he brought this, and he made this for me. And when he gave this to me, he said, hey, I got something here for you. And I looked at this, and I was like, you made me a jewelry box? And he said, no, it's a machinist chest. It's for all your precision tools. And I was like, I'm a pastor, so is this like highlighters and pens and USB drives and HDMI adapters? No, that's not what it's for. And I was like, no, I'm so grateful. It's beautiful. It's in my garage. I'm still trying to figure out what tools that I'm supposed to put in it. But it's an absolute piece of art and something that I treasure forever. For him, it's just, I'm throwing stuff together, slapping some scraps. But every service, there has been an ooh and ah that has happened. And the guys have been coming up and looking at it after service. So I'm grateful. It's really, really incredible. But that picture of a father in a shop, crafting something together that maybe you can't quite fully see or recognize what it is in the moment until it's all the way done. That is exactly the picture that I want to put in your head, and I think it's one of the best pictures to set up the text that we're going to get in today. We're in the Sermon on the Mount. We're going through this sermon all the way through the summer. Jesus' most famous, most quoted sermon, and we're just kind of slow walking all the way through the summer through this. We're at a spot today where Jesus makes a really big connective between the Old Testament and his now presence in life today in a way that's going to make for us a lot of things come together. It's a very different part of the sermon. A lot of the sermon is just content that was reshaping thought processes about life in general. This is really something that connects to his personal identity. This is a section that's going to talk about his identity and why he's here and what he's came to do and all those kind of things. And to say that sounds warm and fuzzy, but it actually wasn't, because there was a lot of talk. There was a lot of commotion. His action, his interactions, his ministry, his healings, his miracles, he had done enough of them that, man, there was really starting to be some chatter around town. And I know that like chatter, like Facebook chatter, like every community has 2 or 3 of these. I know that didn't exist back then. But I had a little fun with chat this week to say, what if it did? What if Galilee chatter was a thing at the beginning of Jesus' ministry? What would Galilee chatter look like? And I thought this was hilarious. I want to share this with you today. Let me show you some of the posts. Okay, so Mary. All right, I was on a crowd on the hillside. I don't even know how to explain what I heard. This guy, Jesus, said, blessed are the poor in spirit. Blessed are the mourning. I've never heard anything like it. I'm sharing for the people in the back. The Pharisees' official account. Reminder that unauthorized teaching on hillsides is a violation of established rabbinical protocol. We're monitoring the situation. Stay safe. Here's a skeptic who says, anyone else notice this teacher has 0 formal credentials? I checked with the temple, not registered. Just saying. Do your research, people. Here's a traditionalist who says, I have it on good authority that this Jesus of Nazareth is planning to do away with Moses entirely. The law, the prophets, all of it, gone. My cousin's neighbor heard him say so on a hillside last week. Share this before they take it down. To which an eyewitness says, I was actually there. That's not what he said. The Pharisees, though, were investigating. Peter's wife has a post that's nice. Simon has left the boat again. 3rd time this month. Followed some guy from Nazareth. If anyone sees him, tell him dinner's getting cold. I cannot. Update. He says he's a fisher of men now. I don't even know what that means, but dinner is still cold. Here's someone who was at the wedding that Jesus turned water into wine. I don't want to cause drama, but the wine at this wedding was incredible. And I heard it started as water. Someone please explain, because I have questions. To which the Pharisees post, yeah, we're looking into the licensing requirements for miracle-adjacent catering events. This man ate dinner at a tax collector's house last night. A tax collector. I think that says everything you need to know. Somebody else posts anonymously. He's also talked to a Samaritan woman last week. Pharisees make everybody know. We're aware. We're aware. Here's a mom in the crowd. This is a true story from Jesus' ministry. Tried to bring my kids to see Jesus today, and his disciples literally turned us away. Turned us away. I'm fuming. Update. Jesus overruled him, helped my kids, blessed them, and now I'm absolutely not crying right now. Okay, I am crying right now. And here's the last one. This is a great one. Judas made a post. Great group, really. It's a great group. Couldn't be happier. No complaints. Everything is fine. Everything is fine. I don't know what exactly everybody was saying about Jesus at that point, but there is definitely a point in this message where you can tell he's addressing some of the chatter. And he's trying to reshape some of the conversation that's out there about him. And so we're going to start here in verse 17, but lean into these words because these next 127 words are big ones. I mean, they're going to be really, really revealing and help us do a number of things. One, make sense of the whole Bible from start to finish, from Genesis to Revelation. 2, be pretty clear about what he's doing and why he came. And 3, we're going to step on some toes because something that Jesus says here is one of the most religiously offensive things that he ever said. So we'll start with verse 17. Jesus said, don't think that I've come to abolish the law or the prophets. I've come not to abolish them, but to fulfill them. For truly I tell you, until heaven and earth disappear, not the smallest letter, not the least stroke of a pen will by any means disappear from the law until everything is accomplished. Therefore, anyone who sets aside one of the least of these commands and teaches others accordingly will be called least in the kingdom of heaven. But whoever practices and teaches these commands will be called great in the kingdom of heaven. For I tell you that unless your righteousness surpasses that of the Pharisees and the teachers of the law, you will certainly not enter the kingdom of heaven. So Jesus addresses this misunderstanding about who he is, and specifically that he's come to abolish the law and the prophets. If you're not familiar with what's meant by the law and the prophets, maybe the simplest way to explain it is everything in the Old Testament in your Bible. That's the law and the prophets. That's the whole recorded history of God and his people from creation all the way to the time of Jesus. This includes things like the 10 Commandments, the 613 laws connected in the law. There were requirements or duty for God's people to uphold at all times. It's all there. And so there was a belief that what Jesus was calling people to do was to leave all of that completely, tear it up, rip it up, throw it away, and move on to something else in that he was teaching. And he's here to say, no, 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 no. I'm here to show you something. I'm not here to rip that apart or put that down or say that that's not in any way significant or important. I'm just here to say, I am the fulfillment of the law and the prophets. Everything that they were about is about me. Now, if you're not real familiar with reading the Bible, this thing that statement is huge, and it makes the whole Bible make a little bit more sense. Because instead of just being a collection of a bunch of random religious stories that you're trying to take a point or two from, what Jesus is saying is it's all one story. It has one primary point. It's all on an arc telling one gigantic story. Lots of individual stories, yes, but it's all part of one big arc. One of the most powerful things you can do to make sense of anything you're reading in the Old Testament is always ask, how do I get to Jesus from here? Or what does this story reveal about Jesus? Because the whole thing was pointing to him. He's in the process of revealing that. That's what his ministry is going to do. But he's trying to show every sacrifice pointed to him, every promise connected to him, every prophecy pointed to him, every hope pointed to him. It's all part of the same story. I'm not here to abolish it. I'm here to fulfill it. Let me maybe explain it this way. Some of you guys are old enough to have used one of these guys. How many of you can say that you actually composed a real document for a real situation, not like goofing around, but like you had to write a paper or report or do something formal on this? Can we do a show of hands? Okay, some of you have. I remember these growing up, but they were like already discarded by the time I got my hands on them. They were in kids' playrooms and things like that. You know, knock yourself out, guys. You know, like have fun on it, because like we've moved on. I look at this, and it's a beautiful, this is a beautiful antique, and it's on loan today for me, so I have to be careful with it so I don't break it. I tried typing on it. It doesn't work very well. It's like real stiff, and things don't go back down. But I look at this, and I imagine typing on it, and I get cold chills. How hard must it have been to write a single-page document of any kind on this device? With zero margin for error. You make one mistake and it's over. It's over. Whiteout came along and that was a beautiful thing for a while. But this was how you composed it. I can't put it in a backpack. I can't put it in my pocket. It's heavy. I'm getting tired already carrying it. But it's beautiful and it really was purposeful. Okay? So keep that picture in your mind. And now understand this. This is the fulfillment of this. It does not abolish this. It's the fulfillment of this. This thing right here is everything that ever dreamed of being and then some. Because I can type everything I could type on here, but I can push a button and I can send something across the world in a nanosecond from here. I can make mistakes and I can hit delete and back it up. I can save a document. I don't have to keep a hard copy. I can keep version after version after version after version of it on this. So some would say, well, these have become obsolete typewriters. Everybody moved on. We did replace them, but this was the same technology. When we're using a modern computer and typing on it, we're not doing away with the old typewriter. We're working on the fulfillment, the same letter structure, everything that was here. The general idea was there all along. This just took it to a completely different place that no one who ever typed on a typewriter in its original form could have ever comprehended. That's what Jesus is saying. I'm not here to abolish the law. I'm here to fulfill it. I'm here to take this to a place where you see this was what the story was always pointing to all along. Paul will talk about this later in Galatians in chapter 3 when he says that before the coming of this faith, and he's talking about faith in Jesus, we were held in custody under the law, locked up until the faith that was to come would be revealed. So the law was our guardian until Christ came, that we might be justified by faith. And now that this faith has come, we're no longer under a guardian. That means something shifted when Jesus came. And that he is this bridge from the Old Testament to the New Testament, the Old Covenant to the New Covenant. He is that shift. He is the change. He is what the old was pointing to, and it's through him everything from here will move forward. So he's asserting some authority in what he's saying. Not everybody would like what he's about to say. Not everybody would like his ministry when he asserts that authority, but that's what he's doing in this moment. And no one would feel this more than when he said these words, unless your righteousness can surpass that of the Pharisees, you will not enter into the kingdom of heaven. I don't know how your ears heard that when we read it, but Jesus' audience would have felt the ground shift beneath their feet. That was so explosive and so shocking of a statement because the Pharisees were the top religious leaders in the world. In the eyes of the entire culture, no one was more thoroughly religious and followed the law than the Pharisees. I mean, these guys were so devout that they followed every rule and then created rules on top of the rules so that they could completely or honor the original rules. You know, if they were told to tithe, they wouldn't just tithe with finances. They would tithe their garden herbs. I mean, down to their garden. They were trying to follow every single letter of the law. And Jesus says, unless your righteousness is greater than them, you're not going to make it into heaven. To which an audience would say, well, then we're all out. Because no one is doing it better than them. No one is running the play and following the law better than these guys. What Jesus is saying isn't raising the bar. What he's doing is he's blowing up the whole system. He's exposing the whole system. And he's saying this is not a performance checklist. This isn't like a moral point system. It's a portrait. The law and the prophets and everything that was spoken of to God's people as an expectation, it was a portrait of what life could be. I mean, you go look at the Ten Commandments and you look at the things like love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, strength, and mind, the Shema. You got the Ten Commandments, which are talking about things about loving God above all other things, loving your neighbor as yourself. Don't kill, don't covet, don't steal, don't lie. These were not just rules. This was God saying, this is the picture. This is the portrait of the most beautiful version of life that we could have. And the problem was not the portrait. The problem was that you and I, when handed the brush, could never paint the picture perfectly. But how would we know that? How would we know what God's standard is that we've missed? What's the rule or what's the law that we're supposed to be aware of as the standard? That's what the law came to do. That's what the law was supposed to do. And the reason why, because you might ask, and the Pharisees would probably ask, why would God give us something and say, you have to do this, if by doing so, it isn't enough for God? Why would the law that God give not be enough for God, that he could receive our obedience to it as enough to build relationship or credibility with him? The problem is that nobody can fulfill it perfectly. So what the law was good for was shining a light on the problem. How many of you ever held the light for dad growing up? I won't ask you if it went well because most of us have stories of this not going well. You had one job. Hold the light. Hold the light. And a light is really, really important in the whole process, especially if it's dark wherever you're looking. I mean, like if it's at night and you're traveling on the road and you've got something going on in the engine bay and you're trying to figure out what it is, you shine a light and it goes, right there is the problem. Or if you're in the crawl space under the house and you think you have a leak, you're able to get under there and go, right there, I see it. And this light is shining right to it. If there's an electrical problem and you don't know what it is, but you're suspecting it, you can go, there's the frayed wire. I see it right there. The light is so valuable. But no one, after shining a light on the problem, says, oh, there's the leaky pipe. Now, flashlight, fix it. Right? Like the flashlight has value, but it's also unbelievably limited when it comes to actually fixing the problem. You need the light to illuminate what the problem is, but you also are going to need a tool in the other hand to actually fix the problem. What Jesus is trying to highlight is that the law is the flashlight. That God had to give his people first so that they knew what his standards were, so that they could be illuminated as to what the problem was. By the time Jesus steps onto the scene, what you have is Pharisees who have mastered holding the flashlight. They are pros at shining the light. That's all they know how to do, and so they are absolute masters of shining the light. And they shine the light on their sin, your sin, and everybody's sin, and give you another rule on top of a rule on top of a rule to try to take care of it. They held the flashlight perfectly. But the pipe was still broken. And so part of Jesus' frustration with the religious system at that time was that all anybody ever wanted to do was shine lights. No one or nothing could ever fix the actual problem. Here's where this gets personal, because I think there's maybe a temptation to go, this is just a Bible lesson from the past. No, this gets real personal real quick. Here's how. The operating method of the Pharisee is basically the default operating method of everybody who's ever tried to get right with God on their own. Most all of us at some point, if not right now, have run some version in the background of our faith, some version of this low-grade, unspoken, do it, perform it myself, follow the rules version of if I do, I have the right to have a relationship with God. It's something like this. It's like, God, I'm a decent person, or I'll be a decent person. I'll try not to do the bad things. I'll try to do some good things. I'll try not to be as bad as that guy. And in the ledger, somewhere, the good and the bad, a few things will cancel each other out. But in the end, my expectation, my hope, we're going to have more on the good side than the bad side, and so we're going to be fine. We're going to be square, God. It's maybe not said in those words, but there's some version of it. And it can range anywhere from a low stakes, low grade intensity to a high stakes, high grade intensity. Jesus, when he says that unless your righteousness surpasses that of the Pharisees, he's not saying that the Pharisees need to try harder. He's saying that's a broken way to relate to God. You can't. Because that way requires total perfection. And there's nobody who can do that. There's no one who can totally do that. I gave you the law to be a flashlight, but that law cannot save. So that's bad news. That's bad news for you and I. That was bad news 2,000 years ago for an original audience. Because that meant there's no way that I can earn, do, achieve, or make up for any mistakes in the past and try to fix this problem I have with God. There's just no way. There's good news coming. But before we get to the good news, you have to sit in the bad. The good news, and this is what Jesus would spend the rest of his ministry doing, is showing this very truth, that the righteousness that God requires is the righteousness that Jesus provides. It's the righteousness that he provides. The law painted a perfect portrait of life. None of us could meet it. Everybody has fallen short. But Jesus came to live a perfect life. And then to take his perfect record and to allow us an opportunity to claim it as our own. How could we claim something that we didn't earn as our own? It would have to be given to us willingly. But how did that get accomplished if the law, even if Jesus was to fulfill it perfectly, how could I receive something if I've been the one breaking the law? Well, the law was never designed to be what would fix the problem of sin. The law highlighted the problem, but the tool in the other hand was required to fix it, and that was the cross. And God used the light that came from the law to show what his standard was. But he used the cross to fix the problem. He used the cross to put everything that he's been trying to accomplish and everything that he's trying to do, and something that only he could do, in his hands so that he could, by his own sacrifice, extend to us something that we didn't deserve on our own. Not because, and so this is what Jesus was aiming towards all along. His ministry has been think of that workshop again. Every time you read anything from the ministry of Jesus and you're like, what is he trying to do here? What is he trying to do? Every time, remember, this is what he was building. This is what he was building. So when you see like, Jesus, are you picking a fight with religious leaders? Those guys are going to end up killing you. Know that exactly, because this is what I'm building. Every time you can't quite understand why he's trying to lead us to a place where he's giving us something that we don't deserve, here's why, because this is my ultimate representation. It took a while. I mean, it took thousands of years of human history before Jesus even arrives on the scene. And then when he arrives on the scene, he starts working. He starts building. What was Jesus' trade before he went into ministry? Carpenter. Go figure. What is a craftsman who's been working on a project for a long time say with great satisfaction when the final step has been made in the whole journey? They step back from their work and they say, it's finished. It's finally finished. In Jesus' final words from the cross, he said that exact thing. As he breathed his last, he said, it is finished. It is finished. And everything he came to do was shown fully and completely in that moment. It might not have been understood, but his work and his activity to redeem us and save us and reach into the spaces of our life so that he can transform us for the inside out, it all connects to the cross. It's a gift then that becomes given. A gift that can only be received, not earned. And you get it not because you deserve it, but because you're his. Because you're his. So for the person who maybe is here today and thinks, hey, basically I'm good enough. Good enough compared to who? Good enough compared to who? And by what authority does your version of judgment on what's good enough or not matter? What if the creator of the universe has a different opinion? What if he has made himself known in human history through eyewitnesses? Yeah, it's been a long time ago. But we have such a preserved description of his life and his moment here that it leaves us without excuse wondering, does he have a thought on the matter? He says, good enough isn't how any of us get there. Good enough just isn't going to cut it. But the only way that any of us ever get to heaven is by receiving a gift that we didn't deserve. That means for those of us who maybe feel today like you're too far gone, Man, this is some of the best news you've ever heard. Because now the track record, the pedigree, the resume, none of it matters. None of it matters. What matters is that Christ loved me enough that he would do whatever it took, even giving his own life, so that I could have a relationship with him forever. And that same gift that he extends to the do-gooders, he extends for the down and outers. Because in his economy, we're all down and outers. We're all in need of a rescue. We're all in need of help. Maybe there's someone here who feels like, I've been in church my whole life. I know all the stories and I feel nothing. Maybe for you today, the message is, like the Pharisees, you can know a lot about Jesus. You can know a lot about the Bible, and you can miss him entirely. The key to transforming the inside and not just mastering life in the externals is to quit pretending and to quit trying to manage the outside world and to allow God to honestly work on the inside. So if you walked in here today thinking you're failing, if you walked in here today thinking you're dry, if you walked here today thinking there's no hope for you, that's not true at all. Because our good Father has given us the greatest gift. And he's invited us into his story. And it is one that sometimes we don't know exactly what is going on and exactly what he's doing. But he's made a few things abundantly clear. And he encourages us to focus on what is abundantly clear, namely his son Jesus. And allow that to be our anchor and our foundation in life, to build our life upon it, namely the righteousness that's required to be in relationship with God. It's not something you and I can accumulate. It's not something that we can build. It's something that Jesus offers as a gift to anybody who asks. So I ask you today, have you asked him for that gift? And if you're living life or life of faith in any other posture than that which is having received a gift, may I invite you to do so today as you respond to him. I invite you to stand if you would. Get ready to join us in this moment of worship. Worship is a chance for us to say with our mouth and with our heart everything that's been going on in our mind, in our spirit as we were listening to God's word being proclaimed and talked about. As you feel maybe that light shining down on you that's highlighting all the mistakes and all the failures and all the sin, may you know that the tool in the other hand of God was the cross of Christ. And it is offered to you as a payment that covers all your wrongdoing, all your mistakes. So my invitation to you today is to say yes to Jesus, to say yes to his lordship, to say yes to his grace, and to step fully into the life that is truly life. You can do it today. And it starts right now by just opening your heart in prayer to God. Will you join with me?